Hello everyone, welcome to the Fertility Circle event. Tonight we're delighted to be joined by Sarah Mertzlufft, who is one of our resident experts in the Fertility Circle app. For those of you that might not be familiar with the app, we're a one-stop shop for all of your fertility needs and the companion that we wish for when we were trying to conceive. And there's a wealth of information from our Learn section to experts and a shop. So if you haven't already signed up, you can search in the App Store and go and check it out. But tonight we have Sarah Mertzlufft, who is a fertility coach. She is going to be sharing her top tips on how to deal with overwhelm, how to notice it, and what to do about it. So as I said, feel free to ask questions as we go, either unmute yourself or post in the chat channel, which I will be moderating. And it's over to Sarah.
Awesome. Hi, guys. I'm so excited to be here. So I don't know if just kind of a warning, my childcare left, so we could have an interruption from my daughter. She's napping, but hopefully she'll sleep through this. She doesn't care about overwhelm, right? So I think I have done a bit of a transition in my own business from just solely focusing on infertility to also talking about infertility, or I'm sorry, parenting after infertility. I think that in my own journey, I honestly didn't even think of what it would be like to be a mom. So some of my content it talks about infertility, but then also, the mothering aspect after infertility. I think that there's just not a lot of support. And I think when you become a mom after infertility, there is an extra layer maybe of like guilt and perfection that you kind of try to live up to, because, you fought so hard to have this baby, and then, you feel guilty when you are overwhelmed, or your baby's not sleeping. So if I do refer to some of those things, that's just why, like I said, my focus is a little bit more on just motherhood after infertility. So first things first, overwhelm in infertility and motherhood. I mean, as you guys all know, infertility is probably the most overwhelming thing that can happen in your adult life. It's not easy, and it's hard when you don't have answers. I think, probably the worst part for me was just the uncertainty of, well, what's wrong? How can you fix it? When can you fix it? And when can I become a mom? So putting some perspective around overwhelm really will just prepare you moving forward as you move into motherhood. And understanding yourself enough to know when you get overwhelmed, and then learning the tools to help you manage is paramount to your mental health. So I'm a big advocate for really getting to know yourself and understanding the relationship that you have with yourself, and, kind of like almost your higher power. I think that brings in so much trust that sometimes can be hard to find on an infertility journey. So I think that, these tips also make your life easier to manage, and, who doesn't need more ease when going through infertility? And, really the other thing is that I think the holidays, especially for infertility, it's just so hard. There's so much more anxiety, at least for me. I know that, the holidays used to be my favorite time of the year. And then when my sister had her 2 kids and I couldn't have any kids, it was like I had to buy Christmas presents for all these kids. And I'm like, what the heck? Like I would turn it into, well, I'm not getting anything back, and I have to spend all this money on all these kids. And, it just gets kind of crazy. So I think it's really good that you guys are here and wanting to learn a little bit more about overwhelm and how you can handle it, especially during the holidays. And, the other thing is, as you transition from infertility into motherhood comes with a new set of baggage. So if you're prepared in, how you can manage your overwhelm, it can help take some of that edge off, kind of when you're standing in a whole new space where you also still don't really know what to do. So overwhelm manifests itself in different ways for everyone. So I know for me personally that I am overwhelmed when I have like lost interest in things, or I'm totally avoiding things. So it really starts to look like papers piling up on my desk. I won't mop the floors. I don't water the plants. I just like literally avoid everything that would be, you know, considered my responsibility. Some other ways that overwhelm manifests itself are trouble sleeping. Like if you're waking up in the middle of the night, can't sleep, your mind's racing, lashing out at your partner. My poor husband has been the brunt of many a lashing when I just was too overwhelmed to handle what was going on. I didn't want to look at what was going on in my life. And that's what I think really happens, right? Is, you know, we have something that's triggering us and we're not able to at the time deal with it. And then, you know, littler stuff starts to pile up. Losing our patience, and then also a racing mind are other ways that overwhelm manifests itself. Do you guys have any other ways that overwhelm manifests itself for you?
I think for me, I get very fatigued, like even if I've slept, just like a complete kind of like shadow over me where I just no sleep is enough sleep.
Yeah, I totally understand. Yeah, and I think honestly, you know, as you get to know other people, right, you can see how it affects them. Like my husband's the same way. If he's like, if things are too overwhelming, he's just like, I gotta sleep all the time.
And to be honest, I do sometimes go for
Girl.
the red wine.
Yes, I hear you. Ain't nothing wrong with that. So yeah, I was just gonna share, you know, a couple of my own personal stories with overwhelm. I mean, I have talked about this a little bit on my blog, but my husband and I went through IVF with our first baby, and got pregnant, and then a year later found out that we were pregnant, you know, just a spontaneous pregnancy. And I was not prepared for that. So there were days when all I could do was feed myself and my kid. And those were the ways that I like coped. You know, and those things are okay. Let's not like make ourselves bad or wrong for, you know, if all you can do is get through the day and eat, if all you can do is get through the day and take a nap, that's okay.
It's amazing how much falls away when things get really like bad or you start dropping balls. But actually, if you have had a loss, you know, then like actually you can just focus on really what matters, and some of the smaller things they fall away and they take care of themselves, or people will pitch in and to ask for help. I think is really
That's
important.
so true. Yeah, and I think too, when you kind of get in one of those states where you can't, you know, maybe you just don't have the emotional capacity to, you know, clean the house or make dinner, you really figure out that like those things don't actually matter, right? Like, I mean, having a clean house, yeah, it's great, but if you know, there are weeks or months where you can't do it, that's okay too, you know what I mean? And like you said, asking for help is so paramount. I think it's not always easy to do, but you know, when you're in a state like that, please reach out. You know, people are so willing to help. I mean, I think you probably would be surprised at how many people would be willing to come in and help.
And I love the concept of like letting things slide. For me, it was about lowering standards and just saying, okay, like you say, if the house doesn't get cleaned this week, it'll get cleaned next week. Or, you know, the laundry's piling up, but that's not on me right now. And actually, if you leave that space, you know, my husband pitched in more, and like things find a way of working themselves through, and just being
Yeah,
like
they sure do.
compassion and like being gentle and forgiving with oneself. Yeah.
Right. I think too, you know, I've made it, you know, my personal journey, and I love helping clients to really understand themselves, because then you start to see your patterns, right? You start to see how overwhelm shows up in your life. So, you know, maybe you're not even realizing that you are overwhelmed, but then you start to see, okay, the dishes are piling up. Okay, I don't want to water the plants. You know, the toilet has a ring around it, whatever, like toothpaste is piling up in the sink. Those are just indications, you know, and kind of like your outer world giving you an indication of what's going on the inside. So really learning yourself and learning those things, you know, it just really kind of goes hand in hand. You know, into the same thing, right? Like when you start, like, I mean, you know, I've been overwhelmed and I get mad at my husband for the dumbest thing. Like, you know, he'll come in and like chew loudly. And I'm like, okay, like I'm really not mad at him for eating right now. What is the emotion behind this? What else is here? Um,
Being able to
and
notice when you're in the midst of a fog, like you say, it's using those external prompts almost. Like for me, it's almost the opposite. I'll go crazy cleaning, and like my husband,
okay.
like 10 p.m. at night, and I'll be having the cereal cupboard out, getting the last Rice Krispie, and my husband will be like, "What are you doing? Sit down, stop." And then we're like, "Okay, maybe I'm overwhelmed, but dealing with it in a different trigger to you."
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. I have a couple of friends that are like that too. I wish I could be like that, but I'm just like, nope. Dinner didn't get cleaned up. Oh, well. That's funny. I think we touched on this a little bit, but it is one of my, my key points is that asking for help is so crucial when you're overwhelmed. I mean, there's nothing wrong with letting things pile up. Like if that's what happens, that's what happens. But if it does, overwhelm, if not dealt with, can lead to just like higher levels of stress. And it can, in general, really just keep you in kind of a dark place. So, which again, no judgment like on ourselves there. Sometimes that happens. But, asking for help and taking that first step is such a gift that you can give to yourself. The other thing too, like when we're not dealing with our overwhelm, or we're not paying attention to our signs, it's all energy that gets stored in our body, right? So, if the house is piling up, then and you don't really deal with it, it can be stuff that becomes stuck in your body and you can get sick. So our bodies, work so hard for us at all times. Like literally, if you think about it, like your body has been there for you your whole life. That was something that I just realized within like the last 6 months of my life, is like, yeah, my body really has been here keeping me alive for my 35 years of life. What a gift that is that your body gives to you. It's so like, it's nice to be appreciative of it. And we can help support our bodies by dealing with our emotions when they show up. And then I really think that making a decision, like even just making the decision, saying like, say you're asleep and one of your ways your overwhelm's manifesting itself is yet you're sitting awake and thinking about all the things that you have to do. And then, maybe in that moment you can catch yourself and say, okay, tomorrow I'm going to ask for help. Like, I think that just making that decision can really shift a lot of that energy and start get it moving. And the other thing is that really, like, you do not deserve to be drowning in your to-dos and your tough emotions alone. We're not here to be alone with all of this like negativity and stuff that comes along with infertility. And I think you can get to a place where stuff just piles on and on and on and on. And you can deal with it yourself. Again, like no judgment, but you really don't deserve to. And that's why, you have an amazing community in the Fertility Circle app. There's so many other ways that you can help yourself navigate through these things. So for me, at least, so I feel like, if things happen to me, they probably happen to other women. There's a lot of resistance in my life to asking for help. It can be so hard, right? It can feel like really big. It can feel like defeat, like you're giving up, like you did something wrong, or like you can't handle it all. I know in my life I have, tried to be my own superhero all the time. And when I ask for help and, outsource tasks, it feels like I should be able to handle this, right? Like, why can't I handle all this? And that's okay. They're really like big emotions that can come up when you ask for help. And they probably stem from like really far back in your lives. Like your mom probably, was like that, right? So there are things and patterns and beliefs that you've had since you were a baby that you've now carried into adulthood. You're not wrong for feeling any of those ways when you think about asking for help. Like there's nothing wrong with you. You're not crazy. It's just that being aware of what you feel when you ask for help is like a really big step. So, I always say like awareness is the first step to shifting things. So when you can say, hey, like, okay, I want to ask for help, but I'm feeling, XYZ sort of way, than putting it like in front of you or down on paper or making a note on your phone. Those are all ways that you can get that like energy moving. And another tip for managing that resistance when you're asking for help is to, just let yourself like be human. It's okay. It takes effort to change. And if you are overwhelmed, you're probably used to doing everything on your own. I know a lot of type A women going through infertility, and it's very hard to open up that space and just, let the resistance in, let the help in. Even thinking about asking for help is something that would never cross a lot of people's minds. So it's okay. So my tips for managing overwhelm: start small. Really, like I said, with like the type A people, it's probably not going to get done how you want to do it. So pick something that you like are okay with having done like wrong, right? I used to be obsessed, and sometimes still am, with how the dishwasher gets loaded. And if like the plates aren't in their certain space or the cups aren't, up where I usually put them, it would drive me insane. And I would just, it was like, don't even help me clean up because you're going to do it wrong. And like, I don't want to, I don't want to have to redo it. Right. So I finally came to a spot where I was like, Sarah, you know what, who cares? Like, as long as the dishwasher gets loaded, it doesn't matter. They're all the dishes are in the same spot, as in the dishwasher. And that's all that matters. So I think, making space for letting somebody else come in and do something that maybe you wouldn't have done it that way. And I think that that's a huge thing too, when you move into parenting. Your husband is not going to parent your child the same way that you do. And that's okay, right? It's perfect that, because they're, they need their experience of their parents or their grandparents or whatever. So I think that when you can ask for help, let somebody do it how they want to do it, and just accept that maybe it's not going to be done the same way that you do. It shifts a lot of stuff in your life going down the road too. Give yourself compassion. I mean, I can't ever tout that enough. Being nice to yourself, it's always going to get you further. You deserve your self-love and your self-compassion. And I think that when we are overwhelmed, really that's what deep down we're looking for, is someone to love us even when we don't feel like we can love ourselves. So that's okay. And then the last tip I really have is like, let people surprise you. More people are willing to help than we realize. And letting out your big feelings is not always easy. I've recently had this experience just like in my own life with my husband, where, we always fight the same way. We always like trigger each other. And so I decided to do something differently. And it ended up like working out way better than I ever thought it would. So, I think just don't assume that people are going to do things the same way the whole time. If like, maybe if your husband is super compassionate when you are feeling overwhelmed, maybe go into a conversation with him just thinking, hey, maybe this time will be different. And maybe it won't turn out different, but maybe that's like the thought is what you needed to kind of get things rolling, right? And get that energy shifting. So that was what I had. I feel like I kind of talked fast. So if anybody has questions, let me know.
Please do feel free to type questions or unmute yourself. I had a question in the meantime, which was, can you give some tips, like the tangible examples of how self-compassion might show up? It's a nice phrase, but can you pin it down for us?
Yeah, I mean, so, I mean, for me, like my self-compassion is like being okay and saying, oh, the dishes are piling up. That's fine. That's not my job right now. My job right now is taking care of myself, and however that looks is okay. Another thing is, I think we fall into this like trap of self-judgment, right? And taking a step back from that, maybe even like writing yourself like a love letter, or even just like a positive, like, hey, you're doing really great, and posting that on your phone, on the background of your phone, doing little things for yourself that show yourself you're lovable, even when in those times when you don't feel lovable, is a really good way to start getting that self-compassion moving.
Yeah, sometimes I dip into, I need self-compassion, I deserve a drink, or I end up doing things that maybe aren't the healthiest choice when I should maybe take some time to journal. So like just being aware enough to be like, I'm going to be self-compassionate, but it doesn't have to be wine and chocolate. It could be other like.
And I think too, like, because sometimes society wise too, there's so much guilt and stuff that comes along with wine and chocolate, you know what I mean? So it's like you're doing it, but then there's also like that extra added layer of stuff.
In the fertility journey with sugar and alcohol and
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's so true.
And so how have you found, like, what are the tips for lockdown? People in various countries might be experiencing different things, but I know in London we're just going back into another sort of tier 3, which is kind of very isolating, and that can feel like compounding problems. And it always feels to me that when things feel bad, like there's something else when you least expect, you think surely this is like the low now, and then something else happens and it's like,
oh my gosh, right? I know, that's why I have really compared COVID to infertility. Like this whole year, I'm just like, what do you think? It can't get any worse than it does, right? So one of the things that I've found, and it works for me, so hopefully it works for you, I save stuff on my Instagram. So I have like a whole different collections of like nature scenes when you can't go outside because it's too cold or too hot, or depending on where you are. I have a bunch of nature, like pictures of trees. The other thing is like self-empowering quotes, things like that. Like it really does help to kind of get your mind off of those, off of the yuck, when you can like look out and be in nature, right? The other thing too, I have had so many dance parties in my kitchen, like cranking up the music, just running around like a fool. It has been so helpful because I think moving is like energy. It helps you. And we talked about this too last time, Joe, is the tapping. EFT is so helpful. So y'all Google that. It's tapping or EFT, tapping to release energy. Those things are really helpful, and just finding practices that like make you feel good about you. And if there's days when you feel good about you drinking wine, then that's okay too, like no judgment.
And is there anything specifically around fertility, like where people are struggling? Do you kind of like sit with that and go deeper into it and journal on it and like meditate on it? Or is it like about distracting and dancing in your kitchen and talking to people not in that world?
So for me on my journey, I distracted. I don't know that it was the healthiest way to deal with it. I think that I do have a ton of journal prompts, by the way. If you guys want them, DM me, that do help you go deep and start really looking at, what are like, do I see any advantages right now of not having kids? And it is deep stuff that helps you get into it. Journaling is my favorite. I journal every single morning. And it has really helped me to get to know myself. And it's also helped my bounce back rate, right? So for a while, it took me pages and pages and pages to get to what was wrong, what I was feeling was wrong. And then also to the root of that issue. Now it takes me 2 pages. And instead of it taking, days and weeks and months to get through an emotion, it takes me like minutes. I think that there's so much value in getting like coaching and helping or therapy through the infertility emotions. They're big, right? They're not always easy to look at. And that's why I really think that support is it's paramount, right? And you can find support. Of course, it doesn't have to be like paid, but those people are like professionals. They know how to get you digging deep and put those tools in place to help you shift all that energy and those feelings.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes a professional coach can't be underestimated in terms of like having that discipline and accountability and someone to answer to that's actually going to be like your cheerleader and your champion, but also sometimes that tough love to say, well, how are you going to snap out of this, and here's some techniques to support you. So I found coaching at various times to be really powerful. So I put in the chat sarahmertzlufft.com, check that out. She's also available in the expert section of our Fertility Circle app, so you can connect there and message or link through to her details. So in the absence of any questions, I'll just quickly pause. Anyone would like to ask a question now? I think no one's really put their hand up, just quite quiet tonight, which is fine. But yeah, just wanted to thank you for your time, Sarah. Any final thoughts to leave with, or any tips or things?
Yeah, for anybody watching the replay or in the thing tonight, if you guys want to reach out to me, I would love to do a free session, so we can talk about, you know, any of these things that are coming up for you guys, and any help that you know, I can offer in an hour. I would love to give you.
Thank you so much.
Of course. And then I also have a webinar coming up at the beginning of January, for, you know, geared around asking for help. So if you guys struggle in that area, you know, we can all kind of fumble through that together.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time, Sarah.